Why do different manufacturers have different S.M.A.R.T value? First of all, I think everyone knows that hard drives fail a lot more than the manufacturers would like to admit. Google did a study that indicates that certain raw data attributes that the S.M.A.R.T status of hard drives reports can have a strong correlation with the future failure of the drive. We find, for example, that after their first scan error, drives are 39 times more likely to fail within 60 days than drives with no such errors. First errors and reallocations, offline reallocations, and probational counts are also strongly correlated to higher failure probabilities. Despite those strong correlations, we find that failure prediction models based on S.M.A.R.T parameters alone are likely to be severely limited in their prediction accuracy, given that a large fraction of our failed drives have shown no S.M.A.R.T error signals whatsoever. Seagate seems like it is trying to obscure this information about their drives by claiming that only their software can accurately determine the accurate status of their drive, and by the way, their software will not tell you the raw data values for the S.M.A.R.T attributes. Western Digital has made no such claim to my knowledge, but their status reporting tool does not appear to report raw data values either. I've been using Hatun and S.M.A.R.T from SmartMon tools in order to gather the raw data values for each attribute. I've found that indeed, I'm comparing apples to oranges when it comes to certain attributes. I've found, for example, that most Seagate drives will report that they have many millions of read errors, while Western Digital 99% of the time shows 0 for read errors. I've also found that Seagate will report many millions of seek errors, while Western Digital always seems to report 0. Q. How do I normalize this data? Is Seagate producing millions of errors while Western Digital is producing none? Wikipedia's article on S.M.A.R.T status says that manufacturers have different ways of reporting this data. Here is my hypothesis. I think I found a way to normalize, is that the right term? The data? Seagate drives have an additional attribute that Western Digital drives do not have: hardware ECC recovered. When you subtract the read error count from the ECC recovered count, you'll probably end up with 0. This seems to be equivalent to Western Digital's reported read error count. This means that Western Digital only reports read errors that it cannot correct, while Seagate counts up all read errors and tells you how many of those it was able to fix. I had a Seagate drive where the read error count was less than the ECC recovered count, and I noticed that many of my files were becoming corrupt. This is how I came up with my hypothesis. The millions of seek errors that Seagate produces are still a mystery to me. Please confirm or correct my hypothesis if you have additional information. Here is the S.M.A.R.T status of my Western Digital drive, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Edit. Here is the Seagate drive that I was talking about that was causing data corruption. This data is from Hatun. The fact that the hardware ECC recovered is larger than the raw read error rate is counterintuitive in my opinion. This is what I found to be a normal Seagate drive where the ECC recovered matches the raw read error rate. Edit. I want to clarify that I know that Google generally considers S.M.A.R.T useless. I know that everyone should back up their data. I am, however, in the business of fixing other people's computers. Most people do not have backups or have RAID. It is not cost-effective for corporations to troubleshoot hard drives, so they just run them on the RAID until they die. I find it useful in my line of work to check the S.M.A.R.T status of the hard drive. It takes like 30 seconds. If I am lucky enough for a bad drive to show a hint of failure such as scan errors or reallocated sectors, I know to get the drive the heck out of there. If no such hint exists, I'll probably spend many hours troubleshooting slowness and data corruption until I finally find that the hard drive is bad. I'm just trying to fine-tune this process.
It does appear that different manufacturers use S.M.A.R.T values for sometimes radically different things, as you can see here. My hard disks in readiness is reporting high S.M.A.R.T raw read error rate, seek error rate, and hardware ECC recovered. What should I do? Seagate uses these S.M.A.R.T fields for internal counts, so this is a known issue with Seagate disks. Look for abnormal counts in other fields, especially reallocated sector CT, and add a error count. So when it comes to your actual question, if I am lucky enough for a bad drive to show a hint of failure such as scan errors or reallocated sectors, I know to get the drive the heck out of there. If no such hint exists, I'll probably spend many hours troubleshooting slowness and data corruption until I finally find that the hard drive is bad. I'd say a good rule of thumb is, you can only expect S.M.A.R.T settings to be comparable within the same drive manufacturer, and maybe even the same drive model. So when you're looking at diagnosing those S.M.A.R.T counts, keep that in mind. One manufacturer's red error retry count may mean something totally different than another manufacturer's. Sad but true. Frown.
Okay, first of all, I disagree with your premise. Google did a study that indicates that certain raw data attributes that the S.M.A.R.T status of hard drives reports can have a strong correlation with the future failure of the drive. In fact, they found the opposite. We find that failure prediction models based on S.M.A.R.T parameters alone are likely to be severely limited in their prediction accuracy, given that a large fraction of our failed drives have shown no S.M.A.R.T error signals whatsoever. Secondly, S.M.A.R.T thresholds are not standardized. The firmware on the drive itself will flag an attribute as being pre-failure, but the raw values are meaningless to the user. For example, Seagate says, various attributes are being monitored and measured against certain threshold limits. If any one attribute exceeds a threshold, then a general S.M.A.R.T status test will change from pass to fail. The S.M.A.R.T values that might be read out by third-party S.M.A.R.T software are not based on how the values may be used within the Seagate hard drives. Seagate does not provide support for software programs that claim to read individual S.M.A.R.T attributes and thresholds. There may be some historical correctness on older drives, but new drives, no doubt, will have incorporated newer solutions, attributes and thresholds. TL. Dr. Summary. Raw S.M.A.R.T values are almost meaningless, as different manufacturers use them in different ways and have different thresholds, etc. The drive firmware itself will tell you when it is in pre-failure, or it might not. S.M.A.R.T really isn't very reliable. Do regular backups.
I'm not exactly sure what the question is that you're asking. You seem to have the whole question and answer rolled up into one but. Have you compared the hard drive metrics to those given from C-Tools? It's Seagate's standard hardware diagnostic tool and as far as I know the most commonly used HDD diagnostic tool. Don't be surprised if you find that the tools report unfavorable results about their competitors. The tools generally work with HDDs of all manufacturers, but that doesn't mean that they have make their competitors look good while doing. Haven't you ever heard the joke, 99.99% of all statistics are true except, of course, this statistic?
In the physical reality of hard drive internals, all brands of hard drives larger than 100 MB will have a lot of physical read errors. Most of those are safely corrected by ECC, some, hopefully very few, are wrongly corrected by ECC, and the rest, few but more than the wrong corrections, are reported back to the computer as failed read and should also make the drive automatically relocate the bad sector. In addition to correcting raw read errors, ECC also corrects reads that the hardware thought were okay, but the returned bits were slightly wrong. Thus ECC corrected might be raw read failed but fixed by ECC, plus raw read succeeded but was wrong and got fixed by ECC. Thus two interpretations of the data seem possible. A. Non-Seagate drives do not include the ECC corrected read errors in the raw read error count, only the unfixable errors. B. Seagate considers it a read error if ECC finds something wrong with the data even if the low-level circuit did not notice, others don't. Normalization will be very different depending on which theory, A or B, is right.
If you want to support the channel, please consider subscribing.